Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series finale of Superman and Lois, a great and beautiful series finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we're immediately picking up where the last episode left off. In fact, we actually kind of get a perspective switch where we kind of flash back a little bit, where it's John Henry Irons hanging out with Lana, and it's kind of like, right, them figuring things out, because it's like, well, Lana dealing with the fact is that, Sarah's going to be leaving. She's actually going to be leaving the country and having to deal with that. But even her and Kyle, how they're going to make that work financially for paying for that. But they'll make it work because she got to leave Smallville to go to college, and obviously she decided to come back, but she wants that to be able to, Sarah to have the ability to travel the world, because she never had that. Like, once she left Smallville, she came back, but still, she wants more for Sarah, and just like, we'll figure that out. But also her and John, it's like, well, how do we figure our situation now? Like, life has just made it so we can't really be together, just because it's like, we've only been out for a few dates in over too many months, But just when that's all going down, Doomsday happens, and it's like, oh my God, like, I gotta go help Clark. And it's like, he might not have the suit right now, but for him, it's like, that thing is already killed Clark. I'm not gonna let it do it again, which I'm like, I think that's the beautiful irony behind everything. When you think about it, I mean, it kind of got brought up last episode, but it's like, right, John Henry Irons came to this world, unintentionally came to this world, but when he came to this world, he had the whole plot to kill Clark, and look where they come to now. That he's even being like, he's like, I know how important Superman is to this world. This guy's become a good friend to me. He's become an ally, but he is family to me, to me and Nat. So it's like, I got to make sure because I never want Lois and her boys to have to go through what they went through again. I'm not going to put them through that. Like, I've been through that, and I don't want them going through that, having to go through that again. So, at first I was like, when the explosion happens, like, there's no way you're going to, do the gut punch and kill John Henry. It's like, there's no way you're going to do that. That'd be super messed up, but luckily, he's okay. The new war suit wasn't ready, so he didn't get to bust it out yet. And some of the tech is at the DOD, but he has it's like a bomb or whatever, but it connects it. It reacts to kryptonite, and it latches onto it, and it explodes. So it's kind of like it's a one and done weapon that they were going to use against this creature. So it's like, we just kind of got to make our shot count. At the same time, Clark is duking it out with Doomsday, but he's on the losing end. And John and Jordan want to help, but obviously Clark doesn't want them to, because he doesn't think they're ready. And I love what the boys do when they just kind of laser beam him, and it's like, and Jordan's like, come after me. And then Jonathan's like, or me. And they both take off, and Doomsday follows after them. And Lois is beating on Clark's chest, like, no, get up, get up, get up. And he's like, what, the boys? He's like, they're not ready. She's like, you can't handle this on your own. With the boys, you might be able to stand a better chance, because it's like, you're still in your head that you have to do this alone. The boys are here. Utilize them, because that's the only way anyone's going to survive this situation, because I'm not about to lose you again. They're not about to lose you again. So it's kind of like this one final Hail Mary, where it's like, all right, Clark calls out to the boys, like, right, lead it back here. They split just as it's going down Main Street. And just that shot of Clark standing in front of, I think it's the thumbnail on the CW app for this episode, but it's him standing in front of that helicopter on fire, and just looking badass and stuff. And here comes Doomsday, and he slowly dodges it, and then John Henry Irons throws the hammer and smacks him right in the head. It wasn't enough to kill him, but it was enough to knock him out. So Clark's plan is to send him to the sun. It's like, if I do that, I can end this. I mean, he is Bizarro. What makes me stronger makes him weaker. So, and it's like, right, but what if this thing wakes up before then? But Clark's like, it's going to work. It has to work. And he takes Doomsday to the sun. But in that moment, just in that moment, Bizarro is able to kind of remain himself. And it's just in that moment where it's just final thoughts are of Lois. It's like, across whatever world it may be. Well, except for the exception of some worlds, but, parallel worlds where, that love sustains across most worlds. Not all worlds, but most. He remembered himself enough to just be like, I want this to end. And that's the heartbreaking thing, because it's like, he was never going to be able to go back home. And even if he did, he's too far gone down this path, because of Lex, because of what he had become. I mean, not just Lex, but what Bizarro had become. And it's just like, he's just that. I mean, that's what we was doing last episode, still trying to find his way back home to his own Lois, to his own family. But it's like, that was never going to happen. And it's like, the least I can do. And it's interesting parallel that you hope, like, maybe his ending can be kind of similar to Clark's, but like, he just accepts it and Clark pushes him into the sun and also revamps. Obviously, like, Clark is never going to get everything back, but he's recovering from the fight and supercharging a little bit, as they still got one more threat to deal with, and that's the Milton situation eventually gets dealt with, because the whole point was like, hey, we need to like get Amanda on the record about all this. I mean, Lex decided he was going to go for her because he's just like, right, I'm scorched earth right now. And it's like, oh, you used to be important to me, yada, yada, yada. I got to put you down now because you're too much of a threat. She's just like, hey, I'm going to give you back your shares of LexCorp. I'm giving my resignation. It's like, oh, you thought you can't just walk away from me. No one gets to walk away from me. And even if you do, you're walking away in a body bag. And he's ready just to straight blow her up. Luckily, John and Jordan got to her first. But you had Milton messing with the live stream where they're trying to get Amanda on the record, revealing everything there is to reveal about Lex. So, but that's getting interfered with. Luckily, John Henry Irons and the DOD rolled up and shut Milton down. Aside from that, we also had Lex decide that he's going to handle this himself. He blasts Jonathan. He grabs Jordan and starts choking the life out of him. It's like, that's kind of twisted, bro. I mean, to be fair, you're ready to mess up a 16-year-old previously, but now it's like now I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it on Main Street, Smallville. I'm going to choke you out, which is time. Obviously, had no idea, but it's like, spoilers, giving Penguin vibes here, you know? So you're just like, Jesus. And Jordan just being like, please. He's like, no, I let you live before. I'm not going to let that happen again. And then Lois had to step up and be like, yo, how big do you have to be? The fact is, like, no, not big, but like, oh, you're a big bad guy, aren't you? It's like, oh, here you are choking out a 16-year-old in your war suit. He's like, because your son has powers. It's like, my husband didn't have powers when he whooped your ass up and down this street. And he's just saying everything because he's like, come after me. You doing all this. You're coming after my husband. You're coming after my children, and my friends. You're coming after them, but you're not coming after me because you're scared. You've always been terrified of me, Lex. And I was like, oh shit. Playing into that fragile ego of his of like, I'm not afraid of anyone. I'm not afraid of Superman. I'm not afraid of you. And he's just like, I will kill you. And it's like, no, you won't. Because Superman is here and he like takes Lex away and just like they're duking it out, and it comes down to this. Well, Lois did also put that, and I think that probably ended up helping Clark a lot too, is it probably weakened the infrastructure of that suit. Like a lot of like the upgrades and stuff were probably nullified to some extent, or at least heavily damaged the suit. Was that like bomb that, because at first it seemed like maybe it didn't do anything, but I think that probably helped in the long run for Clark to do what he did. But just like this climactic clash between like mortal enemies, it's come down to this. It's been years, it's been decades of clashing back and forth that's led to this moment. And, you know, it's just like, why won't you die? And he's just like, I told you you're not going to hurt another person. You come after me. You came after my wife. You came after my family, my friends. You came after my town. This ends here. I was like, is he actually going to kill Lex or not? And I mean, I didn't, series finale, like, it's like, oh, Superman doesn't kill. And it's like, I don't know in this moment. Oh, I know Batman doesn't kill, but like, you know, Clark does when it kind of absolutely facilitates it and he kind of has no other choice. But in that moment, that clash and just like that super rush towards each other and then like smashing the entire suit in one punch, but didn't let Lex fall to his death. Make sure you took him back to the ground to save his life. At the same time, that moment between John and Jordan, where Jordan was scared, like, okay, like, we already had to go through with this with Dad. It's like, no, Jonathan, be okay. And he's just like super speed pumping his heart, and then like his heat vision's activating because he's panicking right now. And in that moment, it just kind of, I guess his eyes were closed at the moment or whatever, because like it kind of explodes a little bit, and I guess that's because of like maybe he had closed his eyes at the time or whatever. But it just like the explosion of it all just kind of like woke Jonathan up. Like, did you explode me? And he's just like, just don't ever leave me. And he's like, I promise I won't. And holds his breath. I was like, a beautiful moment. Just like it all comes to a close there. It's so interesting because it like there's so many series finales, which I think is such an interesting thing for series finales, where like the action doesn't take up the entire episode. It kind of gives me like Orphan Black's one of the few examples I can think of, but I'm sure like some of the Arrowverse shows had kind of a similar thing. I think Arrow's ending kind of had that, where like most of the episode isn't even revolving around the final fight. Like I'd say like maybe a tiny bit less than half of this episode revolves around the actual like final bout between everything. But yeah, it all comes to a close. And yeah, Lex is right where well no, because that's like a year later and we get I was like, oh, we're time skipping a little bit. Okay. And we have Lana and John Henry Irons wedding, which I was like, oh, that's so sweet, that's so beautiful. Once again, I know people are sick of it, but the Supergirl parallels is interesting because like Supergirl's series finale had a wedding in it too. It was Alex and Kelly, Jimmy's sister, which I felt so stupid about because I brought that up when in the was it episode 7 of this season. I was like, oh, I didn't know Jimmy had a sister. It's like, yeah, there was a show where like Jimmy's sister was around for like 2 or 3 seasons, Michael. And I was like, oh yeah, I kind of let that slip my mind. I felt so bad. I was like, oh yeah. Oh, God. I felt so stupid for not remembering them. I mean, I don't know if he typically has a sister in the comics, but I feel like I remember looking it up. He did, but that could just be something they made for the show. Either way, tangents and all that aside, I thought that was I just kind of a wedding, and I love that. It's like, hey, you have the farm set. Why not utilize it? Plus, it's kind of like one of the best farms in Smallville, so you might as well use it. I mean, once again, it's a perfect venue considering, like, well, Superman and his family lives there, so it's like you can't get much better than it, and it's cheaper, and obviously they're gonna like host it and stuff like so. Yeah, like why not take advantage of it? Like I mean that barn has seen so many weddings, a potential wedding with Kyle and Chrissy, now Lana and John Henry Irons, also Lois and Clark. So it's like yeah, it all works out, and it was just a beautiful thing. Like a lot of closing of chapters. Obviously, Chrissy. They had their baby, but also she's pregnant again. So another boy. Aside from that, we also had this situation of like, Kyle and Lana both being in very good places after everything. And it's just like, yeah, I just wanted you to be happy. And she's like, I am happy. And they get one final dance together. It's beautiful. I even love like everyone's dancing, obviously. We had this situation I love with, of course, Jordan would be dancing with Coach Gaines. Like, I love that. That's amazing. But yeah, so many closing chapter things like Clark, that little side. And I wonder, it probably was there in episode 1, so it's probably all coming full circle because it's a perfect title for this to be the end where it's like it went by so fast. But he saw that, like, it probably was there in season 1, episode 1, and I just don't remember. Like, probably saw that when his mom passed. But it's like, yeah, just everything coming full circle. And it's like, yeah, like, what will be Superman and Lois Lane's legacy? And it's like, yeah, Lois is like, I'd hope that it'd be truth, justice. And he finishes by being like, a better tomorrow. I'm like, literally brought that up last episode because it's like, I love that. They also find out about Lex, like his final appeal not going through. He's like, yeah, his appeal was denied. Yep, he's staying locked up for life. And he went into prison, Stryker's thinking like, oh, things are going to be different. I was like, well, we know the difference now is like, well, we know Bruno's there at the same time you're going to be there, and you're going to be there for the rest of your life. So I was like, I was hoping Bruno wouldn't kill him, and I don't think he would, because he said, no, I want you to suffer. Because Lex is like, well, this is not my cell. This isn't the arrangement we had previously. He's like, well, things are a little different. And then Bruno came out. He was like, yeah. He's like, oh, like things don't, the only thing that's different is like, the different person in charge. But he's like, person in charge is going to need a chair. And Alexander, you're going to make one hell of a chair. I got super giddy about that. It's like, oh, no. You were pissed about these previous 17 years. Oh, that was a cakewalk to what you're about to go through. You're about to go through hell, homie. And it's like, oh, everyone's going to make your life a miserable hell. Especially because, like, I mean, Bruno's got his beef with you because of the monster that you are. So it's kind of like, yeah, like, gotta whip this monster into shape and stuff like that. So it's like, oh, life is going to be doubly hell for you. So But I was kind of like, yeah, I was hoping Bruno wouldn't kill him. I'm sure Lex is so egotistical. It's like, I'm still going to try and find my way out of this, but also I'm not going to let this place break me. But it's like, 17 years versus the rest of your life, so who knows? But obviously everything for John Henry Irons and Nat, it's like, right. Nat saying that she believes their mom would be happy for him. And it's like, I think she would be too, that they were able to not only come to this world, but also for it to become home for them, that they found in even more family. It's beautiful. Then like the conversation between Sarah and Jordan, I was wondering whether or not they would get together again. That happens sometimes, but I was curious like whether I don't think they do. I think they do just stay friends. And that because for her it's like, right, being away for a year and coming back made her go like, yeah, but I don't think Smallville is where I want to be. And I love that conversation with Jordan where she was like, and being a hero and everything now, like, is this where you want to be? And he was like, or she's like, are you happy like where you are? And he's like, yeah, I am. This is where I want to be. And I think that's a beautiful thing, just showing where Jordan's always had such complicated feelings about that. I think kind of like belonging and finding his place in the world as a hero and just as himself. And I think he's now finally found a good medium to be like, hey, I'm happy where I am. But and Clark says it like during the final chunk of the episode. It's like, yeah, he got 32 more years on this earth. Because of Sam's heart, and it tried to make that count. It's like, right, worked with friends and enemies, as we saw the boys got their super suits. That's the thing I kind of got spoiled on. I saw the image of what their suits look like on them, so I was like, but I think it's a little more classic Superboy they've got. But I also love that it was like Nat and John Henry Irons with them, where he both of them had the new suits, and his war suit has a cape. So it's a little closer to the how Steel is in the comic with the actual cape. So I was like, oh, nice little touch. I even love like Lois had said during her like the officiant for their wedding had called him like a Man of Steel, because that was like the first episode was called Man of Steel when we found out who John Henry Irons really was. That was like episode 7 of season 1, I believe. So obviously once again he's Steel and everything, and he is a Man of Steel, so it's just it's all befitting. So but Clark is also reaching out to Bruno Mannheim, and Bruno's like, is he serious? And Lois is like, I told you he would be. So it's like, right, let's work together, because he's like, I spent the past 20 years trying to saving this world. It's time to fix it. So using their celebrity, they're doing everything they can. They built a foundation to try and help. It's like, right, we didn't fix all the world's problems, but we help start putting things in the right direction. It's like, you're never going to be able to fix everything, because he tried to save the world on the big superhero level, right? It's like, right, there's stuff that you can do on the ground level too that, Superman wasn't always doing, because it's like, it's kind of like, I was out to make maybe a Bruce Wayne Batman parallel. Like, there's stuff you can do as Batman versus stuff you can do as Bruce Wayne type of thing. Well, it's like all worlds collide, obviously. But it's like, right, you try to handle things on such a big macro scale that sometimes the micro scale stuff was your blind spot, like a South Metropolis, So I thought that was beautiful. Once again, friends and enemies like coming together to try and make this world a better place. There was a treatment facility named after Sam, which I was like, oh, that's beautiful. Made in tribute to Sam. I think it might have been a treatment facility. It's some kind of medical facility or something was kind of named after Sam. I'm curious where LexCorp ended up after Lex, because I could see that place plummeting. I wonder, does Amanda take over that full time or something now? Or does she completely walk away wanting nothing to do with LexCorp? Or, I'm curious what she did in the aftermath of all that, But then we see, time start skipping forward. I was like, I was not expecting us to have a full-blown Lost ending. Because I'm like, this might be the only other ones that kind of give us, I'd say the closest you could get to this might be Arrow. Like, series finale-wise, like, kind of not jumping that far ahead necessarily, but like, kind of having a similar feel. Was like Arrow's probably the closest one that's kind of had a series finale in this same regard. It actually kind of reminds me of Preacher's series finale, without spoiling it. Like, Preacher's, well, it's kind of a spoiler because I'm making a parallel, but like Preacher kind of had a similar ending, but I know the comic didn't. Like, the TV show goes beyond, like, even though things are slightly different, the TV show still kind of goes beyond where the comic ended and showed you like years and years into the future, like this does. So like, yeah, like I said, it just kind of does that Lost thing, which I thought was so interesting. But yeah, we got to see John and Jordan a little older, along with Clark and Lois. Funny thing, if you're unaware, the actor who played the older version of Jonathan is Elizabeth Tulloch's husband. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting and so weird. But at the same time, I had to always remind myself, it's like, well, there's always the Deb and Dexter situation in Dexter, where it's like, if you're unaware, like Jennifer Carpenter and Michael C. Hall were like dating and even married for a period of time while they were doing Dexter, and Deb was his sister. So it's weird when you think about it too much, but it's also like, we're actors. It is what it is, But yeah, it's just funny. And it's like, it's just also kind of nice bringing him in, considering like, well, he directed episode 3 of this season. Like I said, he might have directed 1 or 2 other episodes, and I just don't remember. But yeah, I just thought that was funny when you just knowing that. I'm like, oh, that's so interesting. I don't believe I'm familiar with the actor who played the older version of Jordan, but still. Because I was curious, like I said, we don't know if him and Sarah ever got together. His significant other is a brunette. So, but and I was like, oh, who did John end up with? And it's like, his wife is a blonde, if I'm not mistaken. At first I was like, well, I guess him and Candace never, not unless that's supposed to be like, right, she's older and like maybe her hair's different or something like that. Because I'm trying to think like, because I'm pretty sure, because Candace is a brunette, so it's like, oh, it's kind of sad it didn't work out. But I mean, that's life, So I guess that's what it seems like it's implying, but maybe I'm mistaken. Not unless it was like each other's wives or something like that, where it's like, but I mean, she was sitting beside Jonathan, so I'm assuming the blonde was it. I don't, like I said, it could be Candace, and I just don't know. Either way, but yeah, apparently both of them had a shit ton of kids, and we'll never know whether or not those kids ended up developing powers or not. But either way, Lois and Clark got to just spend their years together. It's like every day until the end, they never stayed away from each other. They spend every day watching the sunset together. And then Lois's cancer came back. I was like, the moment they said that, I was like, I mean, we already knew it was going to be depressing, because like Clark already put a time clock on and be like, yeah, I had 32 more years on this world. I was like, Jesus. Like I said, that's where it's kind of getting Preacher and Lost, where I'm like, kind of didn't need to go. Like I said, none of the Arrowverse shows, even though it's Arrowverse adjacent, but I think it still counts as being part of the multiverse of Arrow. But it's like, none of the shows went that far hard in the paint, going like showing the future like that. So I mean, you have the opportunity, so why not take it, right? So I was like, that's crazy. It's like, and like Lois's cancer coming back and her not being able to fight it, but at the very end, like he's like, I'll always remember that moment where she like called out to her dad. Like, I guess she saw him by her side just as she slipped away, and it was hard for Clark, it's like Jordan and Jonathan would come by all the time. Obviously friends would stop by. We saw like a pie made by Lana, but it's like, it didn't fill that void. It's like, this is the house we spent so much of our life in together, and now it feels empty without her. So what does he do? He gets a dog. He's like, how have I not gotten a dog up to now? Obviously proving crypto has never existed in this continuity until now. Beautiful timing too, because as we know, James Gunn added crypto to his Superman movie, so it's like, okay, but crypto is more like super powered crypto. This is kind of Smallville-ish crypto, where like crypto was a regular dog that just happened to get around. I believe, because in Titans, he's an experimented on dog. So he's not like the traditional, like, oh, I came from Krypton, if I remember correctly. I could be mistaken. But, like, because even in Smallville, I believe he was just a regular dog that I think meteorites gave him powers. Or maybe it was the same thing as Titans, where he was experimented on. But he was a regular dog to my recollection, and stayed one after the fact, because I think he loses the powers eventually. So, yeah, he just has like a regular dog, which I was like, oh, that's cute. Once again, Supergirl parallel. It's kind of interesting because Supergirl has a super cat called, isn't it Scratchy, I believe? They make a reference to him once in the show where it's like she's like, "Oh, Scratchy." It was like a flashback-ish episode, or like I think it was like the 100th episode, and I think that kind of got added in there, which is kind of a thing of like, oh yeah, like she had Scratchy. He was never a superpowered cat, but just kind of like a wink and nod to the comics in that regard. So I thought that was beautiful, and it's like right having having a pal by your side throughout all that, kind of fill that void of missing Lois a little bit. And then Clark, right where his dad had a heart attack, he kind of has one. He's like, I didn't die there unlike my dad. Luckily, Kyle was there, which is like, hey, Kyle was probably, hey, I helped save the Man of Steel, But yeah, Clark didn't recover after that. So he eventually died at home, just like everything coming full circle. At least both of them needing to die at home, surrounded by family. And obviously, but for budgetary reasons, but also for symbolic reasons, having like the farmhouse be like the center set piece for all of this ending. Once again, it's cheaper and you already have the set, so why not you reutilize it and recontextualize it in the regards of all of this. So, but as Clark passes on, he's like, the first time I died, he saw nothing but darkness, but things were different this time. He felt different. There wasn't a sadness. He was able to kind of let go being surrounded by family. And like I said, the lost thing where it's like everyone's reunited. He sees his kids as their young selves. It's kind of like, right, they live their lives and eventually they join their father. He sees Chrissy and Kyle and John and Lana. And even he was like, even got reunited with Crypto, even saw Lex, because it was like, right, this is about, I left this world more hopeful, and that was all it was about, love and hope, and was kind of be able to kind of spread that and bring it back to the world in some shape or form. And even, at the very end, forgiveness, because he held on to that hate for Lex for so long, understandably so, but it's like, right, you can't like letting go of that hate. I thought was kind of beautiful, especially because that man spent so much of his life full of hate, and and here he is all alone. He has no one. He had a chance, and maybe the afterlife is a better. Who knows? That's kind of not important, but it is about forgiving your arch nemesis, of letting go of like all that hate. You're able to kind of let that go, and in his serenity, and obviously gets. His kids open the door for him, and there's Lois on the other side wearing the red dress, looking like a smoke show, like drop dead gorgeous. He's like, man, she's beautiful, and it's just like, reunited with her again. It's so beautiful, and it hits you with all the emotions, because you're just like, wow, you kind of didn't have to end this so depressingly, but also it's so beautiful at the same time. And it's just like, right, like everyone needs love, love is a very important thing to kind of go through this world with, and he's like, yeah, if you find it and hold on to it. And even says, because it goes by so fast. And then zooms out to the logo, and instead of like the darkish background, it's very light and kind of like hope filled. I was like, oh, that's a beautiful touch on the final logo. Just add like making that one change to the background was so good, especially for the final episode. I was like, that was such a beautiful series finale. I mean, I talk about it all the time. Sadly, this is such an underrated show. Feel however you want to feel about the rest of the Arrowverse, and maybe because people did not love a lot of the like later seasons of stuff in the Arrowverse. People had their favorites and their least favorites and amongst the shows and stuff like that. That's perfectly okay. But I think at the end of the day, this was a beautiful and fantastic show from start to finish. You might have some stuff that you're like gripes and stuff. You wish they did this better. Wish this was that. I mean, obviously, it's like it's sad that the final season, like they had such a massive budget cut. But I would also love would we have gotten to see what the future held? I was like, oh yeah, I forgot. We did kind of get like it wasn't as massive of a leap, but I did forget Stargirl kind of went pretty far into the future to some extent. But you don't get a lot of clarity on that. But yeah. I mean, I guess arguably because you do have the future stuff with the Flash, that kind of doesn't count because it's like that's cheating because you have time travelers with like the Nora and Bart, so it's like it's kind of cheating in that regard. But either way, I love this show. I think it's so great. Once again, Tyler and Elizabeth have easily become my favorite iteration of these characters, which is not any shade thrown towards anyone else that's ever played these characters or who we'll get to see next year in the form of David Corn Sweat and Rachel Brosnahan. I'm very excited to see their iterations, but I love this version of these characters. They're like I said, it could be recency bias, but they've become my favorite iteration of these characters, and I've loved this show. I've always been so excited to see where it was going week to week to week. It's been so great. I've always appreciated Superman, and I've always liked Superman. Just like the Flash TV show made me love the Flash, the show helped make me love Superman. You know, and there's so many iterations of the character I've loved, whether it's like more recent versions, like on My Adventures of Superman, which is like the way they've gone about approaching that. But like this show has just been so great, you know, and I've loved every step of it, you know. So to everyone involved in the show, cast, you know, writers, whatever the case may be, everyone in front of the camera, everyone behind the camera, thank you for being a part of such a great show. We aren't here for a long time, but the time we are here kind of, you know, got to make it matter and mean something, and it did. You know, it might have only been 4 seasons, might have originally been planned for, maybe we could have gotten 7 seasons, but you enjoy the ride that you got, and I loved every step of the ride that we got with this. So here I am gushing, and it's sad to see this be the end, but I'm also grateful that we got to the end, and they kind of were able to tell the story they want. Well, they didn't get to fully tell the story they wanted to tell, but were able to kind of go out the way they wanted to in a way. So yeah, just to everyone involved in the show, I wish them the best of luck in their future endeavors. So, but yeah, that's really all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.